Now, John has offered us a certain view of history, a certain view of this rather bad history, the first 1400 years. And it was fun for me that several historians were giggling all the way through it. No historian who actually has studied the facts would recognize the account that John just gave. And that's because it's completely false. It's a pure prejudice. It's based on what people would like to believe about the history of science and religion, but it's totally false. I mean, demonstrably false. And I leave it to the historians in the audience to actually point out some of the more egregious mistakes in it. But, you know, there is, for example, an enormously sophisticated medieval science of medicine, which, interestingly enough, gets partly forgotten about at the time of the scientific revolution. That certain retrograde steps get made in the science of medicine, for example. That people forgot, for example, how to anaesthetize their patients. The medieval surgeons knew about inhalation anesthesia, which wasn't rediscovered in the West until the 19th century. So this is not a scientific dark ages. This is a time when there are enormously interesting things going on scientifically. And nor is it a dark ages in terms of understanding the world. There are all sorts of intellectual projects of other kinds going on. Some of them are religious, some of them are philosophical, some of them are historical. Now, the last part of my presentation, because I don't want to go hugely over time, the last part of my presentation, I want to convince you that this fundamental idea of a choice, you've either got to choose science or you've got to choose religion, and you better choose science because it's more honest and it's more truthful and it's going to shine more light on things. That is just a false choice. Any intelligent person living in the world today believes the fundamental tenets of science. And that includes, I would say, large parts of evolutionary biology, physics, all the natural sciences that John, I think, was championing so marvelously. I think they're great ways of knowing about the world. These things are substantially true and we should believe them. But they don't answer all the questions, and they don't provide us with a complete picture of the world. John mentioned morality. I don't myself think that you have to have a religion in order to be moral, or even a religion in order to have a moral theory. But you do need something more than science. The terms of morality appear nowhere in scientific theory. What you need is good philosophy to supplement your science. And when you start asking certain of the questions of philosophy, questions about the ultimate origin of all things, questions about the ultimate purpose or meaning of all things, those questions lead us beyond what we can see. Now, John went on about the gods. I think it's very important for me to say that I don't believe in any gods. God with a capital G is not a God with a small g. And that's a very important fact about him. Part of the discovery of the ancient Israelites is that God is not a God. God, capital G, is not a God with a small g. And the most important, for example, this happens at several moments in Israel's history, but one of my favourite, because it's so funny, is Elijah's wonderful battle with the prophets of Baal. The prophets of Baal have this duel with Elijah where he says, all right, you pray to your God and I'll pray to mine, and whoever burns up the sacrifice that we prepare for him is the true God. Now, that might lead you to think that Elijah thinks that his God is rather like the prophet of Baal, only the real one. But it's very interesting to see what Elijah says to the prophets of Baal in his rejection of their position. He says to them, shout louder, perhaps he's on a journey, perhaps he's on the toilet. And he's taunting the prophets of Baal. The whole point is, Israel's God is not like that at all. Israel's God is not a member of the universe, a top person. Israel's God is the mysterious creator of the universe, the reason that there is something rather than nothing at all.